so pleased this morning to have Jamie Spike with us and a friend with her for moral support, probably. And she is from Manhattan, and I told her I'm not going to give you a lot of background about her. I'll let her introduce herself and share with you whatever you would like. Jamie, we're glad to have you.
Good morning. It is my pleasure to be with you, and I like nothing better than sharing button information with lots of people that at one time were into buttons too, and now you've got them in bottles, boxes, cans, and drawers. And my mantra is, if you've got them, use them. Do something with them, and these are some, I brought a lot of examples of what you can do with some of your buttons. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for a very long time, and a nurse educator who's semi-retired, but I just started teaching clinical in Manhattan for Emporia State University. I was at Kansas Wesleyan for 23 years, and before that St. Louis, before that Texas, and before that Illinois. But anyway, so I had students last night, and one of the people that I worked with over the weekend is Sue Mellies, and she's from here. It's been fun. I've enjoyed knowing her. I've worked with her now with 2 weekends with the students, so that's been kind of fun. So she told me how to get here, and told me where the fairgrounds were, and told me where the building was. So thanks to Sue, I got here. Some of the things that I want to share about buttons is all of you probably grew up playing with buttons or fooling around with buttons or doing something. They're not foreign to anybody. And buttons have been around for a very, very long time. Back in tribal days of cavemen, even though they wore skins, they had to hook them on somehow. And oftentimes they used antlers or hoof or whatever. And I've got a sheet here. These are all hoof and horn buttons. And whenever I get any of the organic kind, I usually put them in the freezer for at least 3 days because they get little bugs, and some of the hoof and horn kind can get used up pretty easily and get pretty fragile. But they're really kind of fun to see, and some of them, you know, really do look like an antler, if you're familiar with antlers, I guess. And the hoof things, oftentimes you can see through them too, just like, you know, hoofs are just like big fingernails, and so you can kind of see through those. Another kind that have been around for a long time too are wooden buttons. And here's, this was I like wooden buttons too. I like a lot of kinds, but anyway, wooden buttons are one I liked, and I thought this was really interesting. And they've got, there's a seahorse here, a turtle here, a cat there, and an owl over here. And so a lot of times people would carve their buttons to however they wanted them to look and be. And then one of my favorite wooden button sheets, I just love this one. This one has buttons, and they're all labeled with what kind they are: hemlock, fruit pit, maple, lacewood, blah, blah, blah. But the part I like the best is on the back. And it's a button from Canada, and it's this bottom one, and it said, "Made by cripple to pay expenses at Dr. Locke's clinic." And buttons have been used as barter for a very long time. And my friends and I barter buttons. We do a lot for each other for buttons. There are, well, now there's 6 of us, but there were 7 of us that kind of got together. They were all friends of mine, but they didn't know each other. And we became the Button Babes. And if you want to get the picture, Heidi is my Vanna White, if you need to know. Yeah. And we have been meeting, this was on the 15th, and this 2015, and it was our 13th meeting. And we met, are any of you quilters? Surely somebody quilts. Oh, there you go, okay. Well, she's from, Carolyn was from Hamilton, Missouri, and that's the quilt mecca of the world right now. I mean, it is something else. So we met there, and Carolyn was real involved in that. And anyway, Carolyn died 2 years ago now. And so she was cremated, and then we had her celebration of life. And I thought, you know, okay, I got to do this for Carolyn. I've got to wear as many buttons as I can and still be tasteful. So this is my funeral outfit for Carolyn. I have earrings, bracelet, ring, all of this, as well as this purse. Because I thought this would go well enough with this, can make purses too. It has neckties and buttons. And most of the people that were serving the reception said, are you one of the button babes? It's like, no kidding, you know. Yeah. And they said, I bet you're the one from Manhattan. I said, I'm the one from Manhattan, yes. And Carolyn used to stay with me since she lived in Missouri, and I lived kind of central of the 7 of us. But I had left my purse with my husband while I went to talk to other people there. And I came back, Frank said, your purse has really been having some experiences. So, my purse has been having experiences. So I said, what's happened to it? And he said, the ladies that are serving the reception have all been taking pictures of it. And I said, well, that's all right, they can do that. And how I got into this is much more by default than design. I didn't anticipate any of this. It's been 25 years now. But I bought a button necklace at a handmade shop. You know, they have all kinds of handmade things. And I saw this navy blue button necklace, and it was only like $5 or whatever. And I thought, I have got to have that. But I won't be able to wear it. It was the most poorly made thing I'd ever seen in my life. And the buttons didn't even match. I mean, it was really bad. But I have a couple good friends that crochet, and I thought, you know what, we could make one like that, I bet. And so I got some buttons from my mom, and I had some. So I thought between the 2 of us, I could have enough put together. So I talked to my friend Trudy. At that time, she was the crochet friend. After she moved, I got another one. Because I don't crochet or knit. But anyway, so I gave her some light blue buttons, and I said, I really would like to have this made into a necklace for my mother-in-law, but let's talk about this style. I mean, don't do this, but do this, you know. So I kind of drew it out. And so we got done with that, and it was just gorgeous. And I said, you know what, I think she doesn't know anything about this, so I'm going to keep this one. So then I said to Trudy, okay, let me put another one together, and then we'll give her that one. So we put together pearl buttons, because I really like pearl buttons. So we put together pearl buttons, and I went to pick it up, and I said, Trudy, have you got that ready? She said, yeah. And I said, that didn't sound very good. And she said, does your mother-in-law know that she was going to get this one? And I said, no. And she said, well, I need to keep this one. I said, okay, so that's yours. So then we started with these two, and then we were wearing them. Well, then other people were interested. And some of them had their own buttons they wanted us to make. But it's just like a lot of things. They had enough that would look pretty good, and 2 that would ruin it. So then we added some of ours in to kind of, you know, shape things up. So then that's kind of what we did with that. So that's how I started. And the bracelet collection that you see, that's more by default than design too. The first one that I found, let's see. Here it is. I found this button bracelet, and I just was drawn to this thing, and I bought this at an antique shop in Abilene. And I thought, nobody but me is going to love this bracelet. So I told them I liked that bracelet. The fellow behind the counter said, boy, somebody's really going to be excited. We've had this a really long time. And I said, well, nobody wants it more than I do then. So I started with this. And then I found, you know, more and more kind of odd bracelets. And they were just kind of interesting. And I thought, some of these, I'll get this, and then I'll use a couple of these buttons on necklaces. Well, then I couldn't do it. I didn't want to take them apart. So I just started with all kinds of button bracelets. And this one, this is on just black elastic, and it has a watch in it that doesn't run. And it's like some metal buttons, some plastic buttons. This one was given to me by my friend Jan, who does the crocheting. And Jan, when she gave this to me, she said, I have something for you. And I thought, well, when we would meet, once a year we had an annual meeting, and we exchanged all kinds of things that we'd find for each other or make. But anyway, she gave me this, and she said, I have to tell you about it. And I said, okay. And she said, well, I was with my daughter's new mother-in-law in Nebraska, and they were in a little antique shop, and she says, oh, I gotta have that bracelet. And the Carolyn said, why, this is not the Carolyn that died, another Carolyn. She said, why would you want that one? And she said, looks just like my friend Jamie. I have to have this, because it looks just like my friend Jamie. And she said, well, doesn't say much for your friend Jamie. And she said, nope, she'll just love it. This will be good. So anyway, that was for a bridal shower, and then there was another shower then in Manhattan. And so I went, and we introduced ourselves, and I said, I'm Jamie Spikes, and I work with Carolyn, and or I work with Jan, and I said that we do the button jewelry together. And Carolyn stood up and she says, Jamie, that bracelet doesn't look a thing like you. And she said, you should be offended. Well, her heart was in the right place, I knew that. Yeah. Another kind of button that I really like are vegetable ivories. And this is a charm string. And I can tell you about charm strings in a minute, but these are all vegetable ivories, and they are made from a nut in South America. And this is what the nut and a slice of nut looks like. This is the nut, and then there's a piece that's sliced. And why these are called whistle buttons, we really don't know, but they have one hole in the front and two in the back. We think it may have been to protect thread so that things wouldn't rub on it, but we really don't know. But I have had fun collecting whistle buttons too. I have a kind of a friend, I don't know them, but they're really close friends. And I buy buttons from them off eBay. And he lives in Florida. It's my friend Al. And I had bid on some vegetable ivory whistle buttons, and I didn't get them, because usually you don't have to bid very high to get what you want. And I didn't get them. And I thought, well, okay, fine. Somebody else is starting with whistle buttons, I guess. So anyway, then about 2 weeks later, I got a call from him. And he said, this is Al from Florida. And I said, well, hi. And I said, good to talk to you. He said, well, I got some good news for you. And I said, what is that? And he said, you remember those whistle buttons you bid on several weeks ago and didn't get? And I said, yeah. He said, well, you can have them now. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, the fellow that bought them returned them. And I said, well, obviously he wasn't making a bracelet or something, or he wouldn't have done that. And he said, no, he's a retired policeman, and he had a friend who was also a retired policeman who had a whistle collection, and he said he blew in every one of those 10 buttons, and none of them made any sound. So he said, you can have the buttons. So I washed those off real good, knowing that he had tried to blow a whistle. So that was kind of fun. The other thing with some of the necklaces, the people, I've really enjoyed some of the stories that people have shared about their buttons. And I had it was a very similar necklace to this. And this woman came up to my button display and she's, I have to have this necklace. And I said, okay. She said, I have this very one. I said, that's okay. You can have that. And she was almost in tears. I said, are you okay? And she said, no. And I said, can I help you with anything? And she said, see this button? And it was one really similar to this that had been just nicked with the iron. Anybody remember ironing and hitting an edge of a plastic button? And she said she was about 8 years old, and she had ironed her mom's dress and hit it with the iron. And so she knew her mom would kill her, so she wasn't sure if she should leave before supper or after supper. So she decided she'd wait for supper, but she did have her bags packed. So she was going to leave right after that. So at supper she was really quiet. And her mom said, you know, are you okay? And she said, no. And she started to cry, and she told her mom that, she said, no, I'm ready to leave after supper, but I want you to know that when I ironed your dress today, I nicked one of your buttons with the iron, and I knew you'd want to kill me. And the mother said, oh, honey, that's okay, I've done that too. She said, you have? She said, yes, I've done that too. And she said, and you're not going to kill me? She said, no, I'm not going to kill you. She said, you can stay, everything's okay. And she said, right then and there, I decided if I had a little girl, I'd never kill her. Well, that was a good thing to decide. But most of us have had some kind of button experiences that you wished you hadn't had. Buttons often come in containers of, this is Dorothy Gray, if any of you remember Dorothy Gray things. They come in cosmetic containers, and they come in shoe polish jars. And some of you probably still got yours stuck in shoe shine jars. And most of the time with buttons, there's other things with them. In this, in my scrapbook here, I have a jar. I can show you here. Where did he go? Anyway, I have this jar, and it is full of things that, here it is. It's this one here. Full of things that come in with buttons that aren't buttons. A lot of lingerie pieces, hooks and fasteners of different kinds. Do you remember when you got your license plate? There was a little bitty tiny license plate with your number on that could be on the key ring. The Cracker Jack toys, I mean, all kinds of things. Then there's things that why I keep my tetanus intact. The things I hate the most are those drapery or upholstery screw things. Oh, those they hurt when they poke. And of course, these things are usually in dust and dirt and whatever. But one of the strangest things I found one time, and I don't, yeah, you can see it in the picture. But I took it down, and I thought, well, I'll surprise my husband. So I told him to close his eyes, hold out his hand, and I would show him my most recent find that was not a button thing. And so I put it in his hand, and he nearly dropped it. It's 2 pieces of false teeth set. And it's like, now why would you really save 2 pieces of a false teeth set for any purpose? I mean, a lot of us have saved things we don't know why we're saving, but that's kind of the limit. Here's a little package of buttons that are kind of interesting. They're called poverty buttons. And they look very different on both sides. And the cards sometimes say reversible buttons, which is true too. But you could cut them off and put them on something else and they wouldn't look the same at all. White is one of the most common colors for those. There's also, I have a brown, I have a green at home. The other thing some people do, even if they're not reversible, is they have painted one side different than the other. So I've got some buttons that are kind of fun that have been painted and you knew exactly what they were. They'd taken it off of a navy dress, but they were putting it on a pink one. So then you got to, you know, put some white around what's navy to make it look like it would work on that one. Okay. The other thing that a couple friends have done some very nice things for me. My right knee's been replaced twice. And I've had breast cancer twice. And several friends have said, if you give me some of your buttons, I will make you a bracelet instead of sending you flowers. It's like, well, that's a deal. So this one came from a friend. I sent her these pink moonstone buttons after my second breast cancer, and she made that bracelet for me. So that's pretty special. And this one was this is my knee replacement bracelet. She said, give me what you would really like to have. And I had some steel cuts on pearl, which are really nice. And I had not seen any jewelry that she had made. But golly, I just love this bracelet too. So this is knee replacement and breast cancer in these two. Another thing that was kind of interesting one time is I had bought a bracelet off of eBay. And so at that time, I didn't, this was like way before PayPal and some of those other things. And so I was sending money orders to whoever it was. And so I bought this button, this bracelet, and it's all dragons. Each one is a different dragon, which is really kind of interesting that there's this many different dragons. But I got this one, and I lost one, so I replaced it with a leaf. But anyway, I said I'd like her address so I could send her a check for the bracelet. And so I got a note back from her that she lived in Manhattan, Kansas. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I wrote to her, I said, what's your phone number? I said, I'm in Manhattan, Kansas. And it was, so she gave me her phone number, and I said, why don't you come over? So she did. And I said, so tell me why you're getting rid of this bracelet. And she said, I'll tell you that if you tell me why you want it. And I said, that's a deal. And I said, well, I have a bracelet, there's hardly any at the time, but I have a bracelet collection and I do button jewelry, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, I had an Asian boyfriend. And she said, it was the year of the dragon and he gave me this bracelet. And she said, I gave up the boyfriend and I don't want the bracelet. I said, well, lucky me, yeah. So anyway, that was really kind of an interesting thing. And there is a woman here in Kansas who has a national winning card, and a card is similar to this, from a contest of dragon buttons. And someday I'm going to give her my bracelet, but not yet. But it's really been kind of fun. Pearl buttons are something that I've really enjoyed, and I bought this off of eBay to use the buttons, and then it came, and it didn't have this little thing on it first. This is Kansas Button Society, 1951 Wichita, second prize. And so I couldn't take it apart, and I've often hoped I'd run into somebody that says, that belonged to my grandmother. I haven't found that person yet, but anyway, I do like pearl buttons. And one of the reasons I think I like pearl buttons is I grew up, where did that one go? I grew up in the middle of Illinois, but close to the Illinois River. And this is what you could find on the shores of the Illinois River. The shells are made from, the buttons are made from the shells, and they have punches, and they punch out what's called blanks. And then they do various designs and punch the holes and that type of thing. And actually, I just did a presentation. It was kind of an informal type deal, but it was to the breast cancer group in town. And one of them said that she lives close enough to Tuttle that there are button things, these shells on the beach of where she sometimes goes off of Tuttle, which is really interesting. And that would be freshwater, just like the Illinois River has been to me. But anyway, pearls are really kind of fun. And sometimes if you ever have a button and you're not sure if it's real pearl or plastic, there's a couple ways to check. One is if you hold them to your cheek, the pearl one will always be cold. I don't care how hot it is, the pearl button will always be cold. And then if you click it with your teeth, it clicks different than plastic too. And that's another way to tell whether it's clear plastic or glass too, is by clicking. Now that doesn't make a temperature, of course, but the plastic and the pearl will certainly be two different, they will certainly feel different to you. Okay, this is like a salesman card. This is when they had, my dad managed a general store, and we had buttons like this when I was growing up as a little girl. That they came with the different sizes and the different buckles and whatever, so that the store people could order, you know, what they wanted. And they were usually in some kind of great big cabinet that had little drawers to it, and that's how you know, their buttons would be displayed. This is another thing that people did with buttons. This is the birthday buttons from 1964 to 1965. And within this group of friends, at each birthday they gave each other a button. And it has Lila, this was April the 12th of 1964, gave her the first one right over here, and then there's Lucille, and then there's Mildred, and these are this is kind of like collecting cards, except they collected buttons and put them all together. And one of my friends knew Benny down here in 1965. Really a neat button lady. So that was one thing that people could do. Again, this is a winning card from a state convention. And these are all pearls. Again, I like the dark pearls as well as the lighter pearls, but they're really quite colorful. Oh, my box while I'm here. One of the things that we decided to do one year, or I said, I think we need to have challenge projects. You know, like quilt people do challenge things. I said, well, let's do a challenge thing. So I bought everybody a yard of this button fabric. And you could make anything that you really wanted out of this fabric. Well, I made this box. But one of them made, I thought I had the picture, and I probably do someplace. But anyway, one of them made a vest. One of them made a pillow and a teddy bear, which she gave me. And what do you think I named the bear?
Buttons.
No, Pearl, because they're pearl buttons. So that's Pearl. And actually, our son's dog kind of took a thing to Pearl, and he had eaten out, or Yogi had eaten out the kind of felt from that one ear. So I said to Jenny, who had made that, I said, can you repair this ear? And she said, yeah, I think I can. She said, I might have some more of that white felt. So she did. I gave it to her, and so when I got it back, both ears are solid pearls because she couldn't find that felt, so she just put more buttons on. So Pearl really has pearl earrings there. That was kind of fun. The other thing that has happened is oftentimes people will like themes of buttons, and my mom was a butterfly person. She really liked butterflies. And I bought this little card one time, but it has old buttons and new buttons and themes. And there are people who just collect, well, just like the dragon buttons. You know, they have a theme of some kind, and then we'll collect those. Oh yeah, here's that picture. There's a birdhouse. Oh, this one can't sew a thing. She does fabulous work, but she can't sew. So she glued that fabric on a birdhouse. It's really cute. And one of them did a quilt, one covered a waste can. I mean, we did all kinds of things with those. One made gift bags, but that's fine, because she had really neat things in those bags. There's also a group of people called Pearlies. They're from England. If any of you have traveled to England, you may see in some of the museums the clothes that are covered with pearls, but those are called Pearlies. And here's a man and a woman in their pearl costumes. The one thing that I enjoy collecting too, besides buttons, is tatting. And I tat, but the woman who taught me was blind, so I don't read a pattern. But I can tat. And I have a collection. It was the woman who made me the knee replacement bracelet really ran a frame shop. And so this was the last piece she did because she had carpal tunnel like 3 times. And the doctor said, you gotta give up making frames. You can't do that anymore. But this was the last piece she made, and it was some of my abalone shuttles, tatting shuttles. And then the purple on the tatted lace was all different on each hanky. And so I have that. So if you come up here and you can see that, it's really kind of neat. My mom she died a year ago at 101. Mom Dad died in 1960 at age 52. So Mom was on her own with my brother and me. I have a brother 2 years younger. But Mom really enjoyed craft things and did a lot. And one of the things that she did was crochet around cards. She did just thousands of these. And people would give her cards, and this is one that she made for me. And I had sent her this side of the card, and then she put the back, it's you're a special daughter, for my birthday one year. And the card thing has been kind of a thing that we did. Mom would much rather get a card, and there's a tatted heart and tatting all around this one, but I have a whole list or group of cards that I tatted and put buttons on for Mom. She would rather have that than any gift because she didn't want anything else sitting around the house. But some of them, and one of them here on the outside of this card, it just says for a special mom from the two of us. But then inside I filled it with buttons. Yeah. And I usually had to put these in padded envelopes and send for like $2, but that was all right. That's what Mom would rather have. And this one is, I had some yellow tatting, some green tatting, and a center that I thought looked like a sunflower. And Mom always had this one on display at home for quite a while. This is my daughter from Kansas, she'd say. That's right. Yeah. Other things, well, here's another Mom thing. When two buttons are similar or alike, just different in size, they're called mothers and daughters. And so I put together, this was a poster I bought, and it said mothers, two daughters, and the rest of the poem is on the back. But I put buttons and buckles of two different sizes of the same button on there. And this was a gift for Mom one time. And then she had, Mom had fallen and broken her hip when she was, or pelvis when she was 95, and then had to go to the nursing home. But so I, brought this home then at the time. But it has, she had a little poem thing that she had attached to that, which was nice. Again, this is part of the theme of use your buttons, and these are just on a gold paper doily. And I really, I bought this again to take it apart, but when I got it, I couldn't do it. It was just too pretty to leave like that, so that's hanging in my button room. Yes, I have a button room. Oh, yeah. And if you wonder how there was a time when all I had fit in just like a little plastic container. This is almost embarrassing. But I have 6 library card catalog cases with those little drawers. And they don't have legs on, so they're sitting on top of each other. And they've all got what colors of buttons are in there. And actually, one of my friends, Melinda, who really has a button business and does phenomenal things. I mean, she does really beautiful things. She has 2 sons, and one of them said, "Mom, just don't die." And so my husband had he died a year ago in November, but he had a huge model car collection. He made cars nationally and wrote for magazines on model cars. But anyway, so my son and I, we did find people that bought his card collection. And Jonathan said, he's 37 and he's in the Army. He says, "Mom, I can relate to Melinda's son, don't die, but if you do," he said, "tell me what to do with these buttons first." I said, "Well, you'd probably prefer I get rid of them first." "Yes, I would," he said. Again, this is a part of 3 friends. One of them found this little quilted heart. She said, "I thought that just looked like you." Well, it does. I like that little heart. And then one of the buttons is like a cameo kind of button. It's a flower, but it's a cameo from a friend who collects cameos. And so whenever I would see cameos, I would get those for her. And then the other is a steel cut. So that's really kind of neat. It just looks like a heart with 2 buttons, but they're for the 3 friends from me. This is a kind of a fun piece too. The button room walls are as bad as the drawers, I can tell you that. And so there are things that people see. It's kind of like that ugly bracelet that looked just like Jammy. Well, it's the same thing here. This looked just like Jammy, so a friend got this for me. But the interesting thing about this is that these are really historical of what people collected at the time and then how they did it. And there's just various things. There's pieces of jewelry, and there's collar clip ties and buttons and jewelry of different kinds, and an old watch, which is really kind of neat. So it's sort of instead of just pitching it out, I think they put it on a frame, which is just fine too. Had a Canadian friend that I made this for her. And then when they moved from Canada to Mexico, and she says, you know, I don't think I want to take this to Mexico. She said, this was Canada, and she said, it's from you, so she gave it back, which is fine. Mom was a pie baker, really a cookie baker, but she baked pies too. And this is a picture of Mom with a gooseberry pie. And these buttons that are around this are called pie crust type buttons. And there's a little edge on all of them. And I saved them all so that sometime I could do something with them, and I didn't really know what. But my friend Sharon has the gooseberries that are in that pie. And so she gave it to Mom. And Mom baked a pie, and Sharon took her picture. And so she sent me that picture, and I thought, oh, well, that takes care of those pie crust buttons. So then I put that together. And that's been kind of fun to have. And then this is from the Kansas State Button Society. And I have, if anybody's interested in belonging, I have some membership forms, and then there's a thing about the Spring Button Society meeting, too. That are over here, and then all of you can take one of the little cards. We can pass those out to you. But about the Kansas State Button Society. It's the nicest group of women you'd ever want to be with, other than this one. But they're really wonderful women. And some of them really know a phenomenal amount about it. I know very little, really, compared to what some of them know. I mean, it really is the life of some of them. They do a lot, and they sell buttons, you know, in lots of different states and whatever. The other thing is, this was some of my mom's stuff, too. I thought, well, I'd kind of like a shirt. Had lots of these white buttons, so Mom sewed all those on. And then when I wear this, I usually wear like a tank top under a white one. And a white button necklace, 2 earrings. My earrings never match. They're really close, but they never match. And when I would wear these to school, students would say sometimes, Jamie, your earrings don't match. It's like good assessment skills, good for you. Yeah. So that's been kind of fun to have. And then this one, Trudy figured out how to attach them to a shirt without a necklace. So I have several shirts like this with the, and they wash fine. I put it in the dryer a little bit, and then I just kind of straighten them out, and they dry out okay, so they're really not a problem. And then this was a fun shirt. Of course, you know, Kansas Wesleyan is purple, and so was K-State, so I got a lot of mileage out of purple buttons. So Mom did this one, and then I saw she had a little butterfly here, and she hand appliqued these on there. And I said, what's the deal with these butterflies, Mom? And she liked butterflies on. She said, well, there's a little piece of rust on the back of one of those shirts, so I covered it up for you. So this shirt ended up with butterflies. Mom was covering up rust. Let's see. I brought a couple other things to share, too. This is a Sunday school pin bracelet, and these are cufflinks too. I have a couple friends that do these kinds of things too that are really sort of fun. And for a while you could get some of the Sunday school pins for like 99 cents, or people just give them to you. They didn't want it, but sometimes if you look on eBay they're like $15, $16 and whatever now. But the cufflinks make up really pretty bracelets too. So I have a handful of those. And then I've got another friend. I got some of the most interesting people in the world are my friends. These are bracelets that are made out of flowers. And for those of you that are Catholic, you probably already know that rosaries were made out of beads made from rose petals, crushed and then put into some kind of binding material. And let's see, this one is when my grandson was born. These were from the blue flowers in his arrangement. And this light blue one was my school colors, and there's a 50 on here. I had a 50th anniversary a couple years ago, 5 years ago, from my high school, and I'd had, that was a shoulder replacement. My shoulder's been replaced, both of them. So I couldn't go then. You'd be surprised what I could do in an airport. Yeah. But anyway, these light blue ones were our school colors, and I didn't get to go. So my husband had given me light blue flowers, and then I had a 50 put on that. And I have several sets of those buttons. Heidi, do you want to get the 10? That would be good. And you can get the card there too, the note card there. When we had our 10th anniversary, you know, I told you we gave each other things. When we had our 10th anniversary, I just really wanted to do something special for everybody. And then, on my work table was just a buckle and a button laying together. And I thought, that looks like a 10 to me. So I did for each of the girls a buckle and a button to make a 10. And I didn't make this frame, but this is mine. Did any of you remember Campbell's gift shop in Manhattan? It was a very, very nice gift shop. And I bought this, so that's my 10. And then for I made each of them one like these two, with a buckle and a button. Had to call my friend Al, I needed a certain buckle down in Florida. But anyway, it was the colors that they had or the fabrics that they had that they really enjoyed. So that was really kind of fun to make for each of the girls for our 10th anniversary. Yeah. Okay, the things on that side are all for sale. And they're the things that Jan and I make. There's bracelets, and one of the things that our bracelets haven't just been for decorative purposes, but there's like a whole tray of pink ones, and people wear those for breast cancer people. There's quite a few blue ones for prostate cancer. And I have some fellas that I do this at parish nurse things. A couple pastors have bought several of bracelets, and they use them as bookmarks, which is kind of neat. But one fellow bought a pink, his mom had died of breast cancer, and so he bought a pink bracelet to use as a bookmark for him. And then I've got paperweights that are, do you want to hold up a paperweight, please, Heidi? A paperweight that is full of buttons, and I make those with the insulators, and I always try to get the clear white ones, and then fill those with different colors. And those are kind of fun. And thank you, Vanna. And then I make button pins, and those are up there too. Sometimes if I need a pin for something, because I wear a lot of pins too, sometimes I practically walk out with wet glue, but you know, if you need it, you need it. So I do that. So those pins are just all $1. But the purses that are there, that are available, those are made out of old neckties and buttons. And I call them church purses. There you go. I call them church purses because you can't put everything you own in them. But the tie thing kind of started by default rather than design too. One of the button babes was teaching a class on how to make tie vests. It takes about 5 or 6. And she said, Jamie, I could use some help. And I said, well, what do you need? And she said, more ties. And I said, really? And she said, well, some of the girls come with like 4 ties that are great and 1 tie that would ruin the whole vest. And she said, we just need to have some. So I thought, okay, I'll help her. So I went around to some of the fellows in Manhattan that I knew that had just retired, and I asked them if I could have their ties. These men thought I was heaven sent. They were ready to get rid of their ties. I got trash bags of ties for some of these that had been, and some of the ties had never been used because a lot of the guys had been given these ties from international. There were some really beautiful wool ones from British Isles and that type of thing, but they had never worn some of these. So I helped Judy with, you know, lots of these. And when Carolyn and Judy and I were together, we dumped out this 1 trash bag of all these ties. And my husband was there as long as one of the other husbands, and he said, you girls look like sharks after chum. And Carolyn says, we're tie-diving. And we were tie-diving, all right. So anyway, those are purses that I've made that are available, and those are $15 a piece, but they're really kind of fun to have. And I make memorial ties, memorial purses. If somebody gives me a husband, a brother, or a dad's tie, we do that. And I also make Christmas ornaments for little kids sometimes. if there's a grandpa shirt that they've cut the buttons off of, and I put them on like those crocheted snowflakes. And a number of my friends have grandkids that have grandpa snowflakes on their trees. So those are some more things that you can do with buttons. And then down at the very end are some button books. I have a whole bunch, but I just brought some so that you could kind of see if you wanted to thumb through. Okay, that's kind of it in a nutshell, I think, if I got everything on my list. Oh, charm string. I was going to tell you about charm string. This is kind of fun. It's like this. One of the stories of charm strings is that young girls would start a charm string, and when you got to 1,000 buttons, your Prince Charming would be there. Well, sometimes you could buy a charm string that still has needle and thread. So either he came early or she gave up. We're never sure exactly what happened. But charm strings are kind of fun when you find those at different auctions or garage sales or whatever. So that was on the list. And I think that is about it. Do any of you have any particular questions?
So what did your husband think when you started getting into buttons?
Well, actually, he really had very little to say because the basement was full of model cars. Oh. So that, yeah, and actually I taught at Kansas Wesleyan for 23 years, but I would stay part of the week there. Well, on Saturdays, I would be home like Fridays, and I'd go in the basement. It's like, well, my stuff was over here, and right now, there's model cars there, and there's baskets piled back there. So he was sneaking in model cars while I was gone during the week. But he enjoyed the button things. I mean, he really did. And he's kind of an artsy kind of guy, and so he would help me sometimes with design and color and that type of thing. And his mom finally did get a necklace. You know, she didn't get the blue one, she didn't get the pearl one, but we finally made her one. And probably we have made about 2,500 necklaces over time. And actually, of the bracelets here, there's about 290 that I've got over there. And I don't even know how many are on your tables. Some of them have tags on because I used to number them. I don't do that anymore. Since I put them on the arms, I don't worry about it. But they really are kind of fun, and you can see different kinds of buttons and the different kinds of things. And some are beautifully made, and some are the kind that you wouldn't wear. You don't want anybody to think you'd made it. So that's it. Okay, any other questions? What did you think of your question over here? Anything else?
Where do you sell these? Do you go to like craft shows or?
Well, only sort of, but more like presentations. And people come to my house. They'll be in Manhattan and just want to drop by and, you know, that type of thing. I've had them at church a time or two when we've had different things going on there. I'll take them. And again, for like the pink ones, I'm going to take those to Pink Power Lunch, and I'll have them at a display. I won't be able to sell, but they'll see that they're there and that this is Pink Month with that type of thing. But the bracelets are, the necklaces all have their own prices on them, but the bracelets are all 10 except the ones that are like the glass and the sea glass, and those are 20, but the rest are 10. And several people said, well, you're like giving them away. And I said, you know, I'd rather people would have them, use them, and get ideas from them than to let those things sit there and rot until somebody pitches them out. I mean, it really is sad when buttons don't get to be used. I mean, they were made to be used. So
and your kids are probably happy that you're selling them.
Yes, Jonathan is thrilled to death. Yeah, yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, right. Okay, any other questions? Yes, please.
Do you go to garage sales and collect them, or how do you get more and more and more buttons?
Well, they find me. Other people go to garage sales and get buttons and say, oh, I bet you could use these or whatever. I really inherit an awful lot. When people clean out other people's stuff, it's like, the secretary we had at Kansas Wesleyan had given me like a 5-gallon jar. And she and 3 other nieces had cleaned out that's uncle's stuff, and they were going to pitch them. And she said, I have a friend that does these. And so I made the pins for her and a couple bracelets for her. But she gave them to me for my birthday, which was really kind of nice. But those were going to the trash. I mean, they were on their way until she rescued them. And a fellow that I was in high school with has refinished his furniture. And then after he knew about the button thing, he said, you're not going to believe this, but he said, I have pitched out sewing drawers full of buttons. He said, I had no idea that you would want them. But he said he didn't know anybody who would want them. And so he has, I said, don't even talk about it. But he had, you know, sewing drawers of like old treadle machines and that type of thing. With those little doors at the sides would be full of buttons sometimes, he said, yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, I've had a wonderful time, so thank you very much. Take care.